As Mary Ann said, my name is Matthew Swift, and I'm the project manager for the Constitution Pipeline, and I work for Williams Gas Pipeline. And I'm located in Houston, Texas, soon to be relocated up here next week permanently for the next 3 years or so. I'm going to go over the Constitution project and the Constitution company at a high level. Then I'm going to go over the facilities associated with the Constitution pipeline that is planned. Also going to go over the schedule, our timeline for the project. And then John Zimmer is going to go over some of our issues for construction methods in agricultural areas. Constitution Pipeline, it's a joint venture between Williams Gas Pipeline and Cabot. Cabot is a producer in the Pennsylvania area, a natural gas producer in the Pennsylvania area, and Williams is a gas pipeline. The Constitution Partnership is 75% owned by Williams and 25% owned by Cabot. On the pipeline, we have two customers. One is Cabot, who is a partnership in the Constitution Pipeline, and also Southwestern Energy. The total capacity of this pipeline is 650 million standard cubic feet per day. Cabot has 500 million of that capacity. They've signed up for 500 million as a customer. And Southwestern Energy has signed up for 150 million standard cubic feet per day on the Constitution pipeline, which the Constitution pipeline is fully subscribed in terms of it's built to capacity once it's built, if it gets built. Being that it's a joint venture with Cabot and Williams, and the employees here for the Constitution Pipeline are Williams employees. Williams will be the constructor and the operator of the pipeline. And that includes all the services that go along with constructing a pipeline, from engineering, design, fine-tuning the route, environmental surveys, civil surveys, regulatory, permitting, and then of course the construction and the commissioning and startup of the pipeline. And then when it's turned over to operations, Williams Gas Pipeline will be operating the pipeline. We're estimating a staff of about 10 people for the 120 miles of pipeline to constantly operate and maintain the pipeline. A full-time staff of about 10 people. The Constitution Pipeline starts in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, and it traverses somewhat up the I-88 corridor into Schoharie County, where we will be delivering the 650 million standard cubic feet per day of gas into the existing Iroquois gas pipeline system and the Tennessee gas pipeline system. Iroquois feeds New York City, and the Tennessee gas pipeline system feeds the Boston area. Our targeted in-service date for this project is the end of March of 2015, a little less than 3 years from now. Now, on to the facilities associated with the Constitution pipeline. Obviously, the major facility, especially in Delaware County, is the pipeline. Starting in Susquehanna County, at a Williams compressor station to be built this summer, will be the beginning of the pipeline. And at this beginning of the pipeline, at a Williams midstream compressor station where we compress gas to increase the pressure, Constitution will have a metering facility where we'll actually measure the gas coming into the Constitution pipeline. And this is where Cabot will introduce their supply of gas into the Constitution pipeline. Then also, there will be a second meter station in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, and we'll have another metering facility where we'll measure the gas. This is where Southwestern Energy will deliver their gas into the Constitution Pipeline. Pipeline itself, as I said, starts in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. It is 121 miles in length. The diameter is 30 inch. The design pressure is 1,480 psi, pounds per square inch. And then the pipeline will end in, like I said, in Schoharie County. In Schoharie County, we will have a compressor station where we'll boost the pressure up, and that will allow us to get into the Iroquois pipeline. Also in Schoharie County, we'll have 2 metering facilities, one to meter gas that's going in, delivering into Iroquois, and one to meter gas that will go into Tennessee gas pipeline system. The compressor station in Schoharie County is a 32,000 horsepower compressor, and it's made up of 2 natural gas driven turbines, 16,000 horsepower each. Here in Delaware County on the pipeline, on the 120 miles of pipeline, I think we have 43 miles of 120 miles here in Delaware County. The above ground facilities that you'll see are quite small, and they're what we call mainline block valve settings. And this is where we have a 30-inch block valve that can actually, and we have one approximately every 15 miles. We might have 3 in Delaware County. And these are fenced area on our right-of-way, and they're about 10 by 10. And that allows us to block out sections of the pipeline in case of an incident, an emergency, or any type of situation that requires us to block that section of pipeline. On the pipeline itself, I'm sure many of you already have gotten letters from our land agents, from Constitution land agents, requesting survey permissions on your property. And currently, we are requesting permission to survey a 600-foot wide corridor. And in this 600 feet, and it's 300 feet on each side of our proposed center line. And that is to survey for civil surveys, environmental surveys such as threatened and endangered species, cultural resource sites, wetlands, so we can identify those areas and either avoid them or minimize the impact to those areas. So just wrapping up on this slide, 43 miles of pipeline in Delaware County. The above ground facilities will be approximately 3 above ground block valves, and they'll be fenced in, and they will be on the permanent right of way. Our permanent right of way is 50 feet, and our construction workspace our standard workspace is 110 feet. And if we're in an ag land where we have to do topsoil segregation, the width is 125 feet. So these block valve settings, which will be above ground, are about 10 by 10, and will be located on the 50 feet of our permanent easement. We'll also have pipeline markers in line of sight, but they're small plastic pipeline markers to allow our operations personnel to know exactly where the pipeline is. Next slide is a table of our facilities that I just talked about, and as you can see, it's in New York State. We have 98 miles of 30-inch pipeline proposed to be built. And in Delaware County, 43 of that 98 will be in Delaware County. Here's a map of our proposed route. As you can see, I'll go over again. We're starting in central Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. We will have 2 metering facilities to bring gas into the pipeline. We will go across the New York State border into Brooks County, cross into the southeastern corner of Mango County, and then 43 miles of pipeline in the northern part of Delaware County, very loosely following the Interstate 88 corridor, and then 34 miles miles in Schoharie County, where we'll have one compressor station to boost the pipeline pressure, and then 2 metering facilities to get the gas into the Iroquois pipeline and then Tennessee gas pipeline. Our schedule. We have already entered into, first of all, it says commence FERC pre-filing process for FE. The FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, federal agency that regulates interstate gas pipelines, which what the Constitution is. And it regulates pipeline projects such as this. So they're the federal agency that is overseeing this pipeline project. And a few years ago, they started a pre-filing process. We have to file an application, a full-blown application. That will not be done until next January. But to get the public involved early on, that FERC set up a pre-filing process. And we entered into it in the middle of April. And some deliverables that are part of the FERC pre-filing process, which will take, as you can see, most of the year. It'll take the rest of the year as we file our full-blown application, our official application in January of 2013. This coming Monday, we available to the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we owe what we call Environmental Resource Reports 1 and 10. 1 is basically the purpose and need of the pipeline, the scope, like the facility I just went over, and also a lot of construction methods. Resource Report 10 is the alternatives. And these are all designated by the FERC. These are the alternatives that we've identified, and I think we have 11 on the pipeline. 11 we have identified, and this is Schoharie County, identified 11 across the pipeline, but in Schoharie County, 3 different sites for our compressor station. And then just on these resource reports, there are resource reports 1 through 12. As part of the pre-filing process, in October, our deliverable to FERC is resource reports 1 through 12. For 1 is basically the scope, 10 is the alternatives, and then other from 2 through 12. There's threatened endangered species, there's noise, there's socioeconomics, there's soils, cultural resource, archaeological sites. That's so there's a whole list of resource reports that we have to file with the FERC as in draft form in October. In January, we'll file the formal one. We're looking at commencing, as I said before, many of you have gotten the survey letters requesting permission to survey your land. We're looking at commencing surveys in June on that 600-foot wide corridor. Also, as part of the pre-filing process, Constitution will have open houses. These are semi-informal open houses where experts from the company will be at different locations in the month of July. And these we'll basically have 1 in each county. And of course, Delaware obviously will have one. And as a lot of you saw, as you were going through the maps, we'll have these maps in a more refined state in 2 months. We'll have booths set up, and we'll have many individuals from the company answering your questions in more of an informal setting. We are expecting the FERC in August to set up what they call their scoping meetings. These are much more formal. FERC will set those up. We will be in attendance, and actually there'll be a court reporter there taking notes. It'll be a much more formal setting for you. And then, have we passed out the FERC guidelines?
The flow chart is
Yeah,
over.
flow chart. Just so you'll know that the FERC docket number, well, it's in the back of the presentation. The FERC docket number for the pre-filing project is PF 12-9. PF is pre-filing, PF 12-9. In January, when we file our actual full-blown formal certificate or application with FERC, there'll be another docket number, an actual docket number as well, another docket number. And you can go to the FERC website and you can search with this docket number. And you can also e-file where you can get emails whenever anything is posted to this docket number. For example, on May 21st, this coming Monday, our draft resource report 1 and 10 will be posted to the FERC website. Then, we're proposing in January, this coming January, to file our actual formal 7C application with the FERC. Just prior to that, in October, like I said, we do have a deliverable to FERC, and that's the resource reports 1 through 12. Also in January, along with our official FERC 7C application, we will be filing our state permits, state and federal permits associated with the pipeline. We are targeting a final, what we call a FERC EIS. It's called a an environmental impact study, which is a FERC study of the pipeline. And then we're expecting a FERC order in November of 2013, so in a year and a half from now. And a FERC order could mean that's either they're going to approve or not approve the project. A FERC certificate of public convenience and necessity would be them approving the project. But right now, we're just calling it a FERC order because they can either approve or not approve the project. We are looking at, on our schedule, when we actually start earth disturbance, beginning of 2014, January 2014. And that would be tree clearing to avoid impacting rare species and migratory birds. And that process would go on through this window of January, February, March of 2014. And we're looking at starting construction of our pipeline and our pipeline facilities in April of 2014, 2 years from now. And as I said, our project in service date is late March of 2015. Then John Zimmer is going to talk about some of our agricultural amenities.
Thank you. My name is John Zimmer. I'm with AECOM, which is an environmental consulting firm that has been hired by Williams to assist them with the environmental aspects of the project and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission process. I just wanted to touch a little bit further on the project schedule. As you can see, we are very early in the FERC pre-filing process. And this process was developed to allow interested stakeholders and affected landowners to be much more aware of the project and to have a greater voice in the project than they had previously before FERC instituted this pre-file process. So there are multiple points through this process where FERC will solicit public comment on the documents that we submit. FERC will attend our scheduled open houses, so there'll be a FERC representative there or multiple FERC representatives there that will be available to speak with you. They can speak through the guidance document that we provided, and they will also solicit comments from you that they can then put into the docket. And ultimately, when they go through their scoping meeting and they get the formal comments on the record, they'll provide those back to us, and we will need to respond to those. So there are multiple contact points for affected landowners and stakeholders to be involved in the process. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight is to start that process and get some information out and obtain some information ourselves so that we can better align the project route and be aware of any potential issues that might be out there relative to land constraints and things. So what I'll do now is touch on some of the agricultural measures that will be incorporated not only into the upfront project design, but also through construction and then post-construction. We'll be working very closely with the other state agencies such as DEC, with Ag and Markets. Matt Brower will be giving a presentation in a little bit that will describe their guidance document, but they have a fairly specific guidance document that provides pipeline companies with information on how to site the pipe, construct it, restore it, so that we have as minimal of an effect on agricultural land as possible. Some of those measures that will be incorporated will be during construction. We'll have qualified agricultural inspectors and monitors out there. These folks, their sole job will be to monitor pipeline construction through agricultural lands, make sure that the properties are restored in accordance with our FERC certificate, our state permits, and the Ag Markets guidelines. We'll identify up front the land uses relative to agricultural land, whether it's active crop, pasture land, if it's being grazed, if it's fallow field, and there are different types of design standards that we'll use for different types of agricultural land. A standard depth of cover for construction through a forest or a non-agricultural parcel is typically 36 inches. Through agricultural lands, we'll drop the pipe deeper to a minimum of 48 inches. We'll also segregate the topsoil across the entire width of the right-of-way. So when Matt described the workspace as being 125 feet through agricultural land, that is so we have extra space to segregate that topsoil and make sure that that's put back over the subsoil and that we avoid any mixing of the two. We'll work directly with affected landowners. We'll have multiple right-of-way agents out there, not only basically starting now all the way through construction, to work with affected landowners and identify things such as drain tiles that we may need to avoid, specialty crops or tree farms. If there are sugar bush groves, Christmas tree farms, we'll use that information to help align the pipe up front and try to avoid impacts as best we can to those types of resources. During construction, we'll take special provisions to ensure that folks have access to other portions of their property, an ag field, with the line traversing through it, and the back end is still able to be used. And we'll make sure that there's access points for folks to get back there and work the land. And also, we'll take into consideration for livestock. We'll fence the right-of-way. We'll keep shorter portions of the trench open. So throughout the whole process, starting now in pre-filing, we want to identify those areas that you're concerned about relative to the agricultural land that will potentially be crossing, and be able to incorporate avoidance measures and impact minimization measures up front in the process and carry those through construction. During restoration of the pipeline after it's put in the ground, there are measures such as decompacting the subsoil, ensuring that there's no large diameter rock introduced into the soil that could come up through frost heaves. And then post-construction, we'll be monitoring the line for a period of up to 5 years to make sure that those restoration measures have worked, to make sure that the topsoil was installed properly, decompacted properly, and that there's no difference in, or as minimal a difference as possible in production of that area. Post-construction, within the permanent easement, we'll still be able to use the land for farming purposes or for agricultural purposes. You'll see some slides that Matt has that shows corn production right over the permanent easement. And basically, I would advocate that you take advantage of the pre-file process and work with your land agent as best you can. And we had another slide of this is kind of tough to see on the screen, but in your handout you'll be able to follow it. And this basically just shows the standard construction process for a pipeline. And what we want to emphasize here is it's kind of a stepwise progression, or almost like a conveyor belt. There'll be multiple activities going on in different areas, starting with clearing, then grading, then pipe trenching. So you may have clearing up front, and then trenching in the middle, installation of the pipe, and it goes in an assembly line fashion right through restoration. So the actual time frame to get through an individual property may not be more than a couple of months, depending on the nature of the property and whether or not there are specialized construction methods needed. And by having that additional workspace in agricultural land, that also helps us move the construction process along faster. So with that,